All right, hi guys. I'm so excited that you guys have come to this session. And we're really going to make it a great one. We're having some technical issues right now, so if you would just stay patient with us. And also, as Shivansh already said, um, there's like a lot of people who are joining in the session, so we're just waiting for them. So please give us till around 6:03, 6:04, and then we'll just get started with the session. Until time, whoever's supposed to drop links, if you could please do that so they can all know about our Discord and all of that. Till time, just so everyone's still aware, and in case this is someone's first session, um, uh, we are the teen debater, and we have a Discord community which is super helpful. We're hosting daily debates there. We have an Instagram channel. We have a lot of like social media that you guys can use. In case your parents don't allow that, then you can do that through their phone, and Discord is just WhatsApp for people our age. So in case you want to go through all of that, please do. Yeah, and membership form. So we'll keep dropping these again and again. We'll tell you more about us as well in the presentation. So yeah, I would just request you to wait for a little bit, so that we could, because there are people still joining. Yeah. Thank you. Also just a PSA, everyone who keeps their cameras on and attends all of the sessions of our MUN basics are the people who will get a certificate from our side, from, our organization. So if you want a certificate, that's the only way you can do it. If you guys don't keep your camera on without a valid reason, or like just don't keep your camera on in general, then we won't be able to give you that certificate and show your attendance of our session, because since we are taking this into account and we want to give you credit where credit is due for joining all our sessions, I would really appreciate it if you guys can turn on your cameras. It's also helpful to me because although I love your guys' profile pictures, I would like to see your faces more, and talk and interact with you, because in MUNs, even in online MUNs, you can't hide behind your profile pictures. You would have to actually face to face and talk. That's the whole point. So if you're being shy and nervous, you won't be able to be the best MUNer out there. So if you guys could please keep your cameras on, that would be really, really helpful. I think we can start now. It's around 6:04. So then I would hand it over to Gauri, who was supposed to give the introduction, if I'm not wrong. Gauri, please go ahead.
Welcome everyone to the Teen Debater's second session in the MUNing 101 series. I'm Gauri and we're so excited to have you all here today. Please don't hesitate to drop your questions in the chat during the session and we'll definitely get back to you. The Teen Debater is an organization dedicated to revolutionizing debate, education, access, and activity for schools and students across India. We want debate to be a powerful tool for social mobility and change and make it accessible for free. We aim to enhance your critical thinking, expand your worldview, but also go beyond debate and build a community. Your speakers for this session will be Siri Omadi from the Management Committee and Avira Bhatt from the Organizing Committee, two exceptional MUNers from the Teen Debater community.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session today. You can just go over who we are as an organization and our mission and vision over this slide. But I want to introduce you all to a quote before we go in. Next slide, please. In a busy committee, if you're not standing out, it is the same as being invisible. So I want you all to try to understand this quote as the session progresses today. Also reminding you all again, me and Abira will be talking about things individually as a component. And if you understand them as components of the MUN conferences, that is when it will be easy for you to understand the flow of an MUN as an experience, okay? So let's talk about the gap between signing up for an MUN and the moment you step into a committee session, right? So first, let's talk about position papers. Next slide, please. So position papers are known as policy papers, right? And most conferences require you to submit this either a day before session begins or even 2 days before the session begins. This is done to make the people who are reading this, to convince them that your opinion is valid, that it is worth listening to, right? It is a strategic document. It is not a random document you're submitting. It is a very strategic document. And it's basically an overview of the country's position in relation to the agenda. Yes, so most of the information you would want it to outline the delegation's policies, the current status, the action taken, the steps being taken, and the position of your country, essentially, right? So you want to show the chairs that you've researched, that you've turned the facts into a potential case study for yourself. And mostly, this will give a great first opinion to your executive board. Okay? And again, you want to address mainly the key points of the whole agenda and committee. So you want to present it in a very formal and proper way, right? Okay, so a proper position paper has three parts: the country's position, the country's relation, and the country's proposals, right? So usually these documents should be no longer than 2 to 3 pages, Times New Roman font, size 12, and 1.5 spacing, the basics. So the heading is hardly the most important part, but it provides the chair a snapshot of what your paper is about. Think about it for a second. Your chair is sitting there reading 20 to 30 position papers. So they need a hook and a proper beginning to enter your position paper and look at it. Now, if you ask me how to start, keep in mind you are introducing the reader to the topic from your point of view, aka the country's point of view and its eyes, right? So many prefer to actually start their position paper giving a brief history of the situation and what you think is a challenge to the global community. You want to frame the issue you want to discuss as something that is not only something you pertain to, but also as the countries you also relate to, because you cannot pass a resolution or gain support for your clauses or votes alone by yourself, right? So I'll give you an example. Suppose I am the Republic of Angola and I'm the agenda is water crisis in the world. So the Republic of Angola believes that consistent access to clean water is a basic human right. And while some countries who have the resources and who have enough water are using extreme technology like cloud seeding, countries like Angola and our friend countries like allies are having absolutely no resources. And that is why we need to focus on doing something for the countries that already have such miserable conditions. So that is how you set a preface for what you want to talk about in the committee, right? So then you can write about how the previous actions that your committee has taken, such as resolutions that's proposed, the resolutions that have passed in the committee, and if you have supported it or gone against it in the past. Most importantly, what went wrong in it. You want to focus on what went wrong, what the failures are of the previous steps, and you need to, while doing this, you need to focus on the failures and the success also of the previous steps that have been taken by your committee, your country, by the resolutions you've passed, etc., etc. Throughout the second and third paragraphs, usually it should be all about your country's connection to the issue. It should be determining what the issue is and where it will go here by looking at the trends and analyzing the obstacles. And then you look at how to resolve it, right? So you can include statistics, you can include multiple types of things like human developmental index, you can include all of those. You need to end your position paper on a very strong note though, but nothing too concrete. You won't have many pages, but this will be used to judge what you bring to committee. Your conclusion should just briefly close the paper with a very strong remark, right? The right before the conclusion, you need to include something that shows your clear thinking, right? Your idea of what is to be solved, what you want to advocate for, what you want to propose to make sure that the committee is headed in the right direction. If we go to the next slide, a lot of delegates realize that the position paper is actually a burden, but actually it is an advantage because it helps you organize your ideas. You intake so much information when you first start researching from your background guide, and organizing it is very important after that. Understanding and listing your foreign policy, again, very important because you need to take a clear stance, and by understanding your policy, you will be able to judge, the agenda as an entirety. And I guarantee you, almost 30 to 35% of your research will be done here itself. Because once you read the background guide and understand the issue at hand and figure out how your country is actually relating to the topic, you will find a lot of data. So your job is going to be to filter it and choose what is relevant and important in your position paper, right? Show the facts that are relevant and are strong. You want to show that the most relevant of your research and understanding is present in the document, but it is just the tip of the iceberg, and you are going to get so much more into the committee session. Keep in mind, make sure whatever proposals you're making in the position paper are viable and valid according to your country, but don't be afraid to be bold sometimes. And the proposals part needs to be consistent throughout your speeches, throughout your actions in the committee, and because you need to have clarity on what you want to do and how you want to do it, right? You may run into a problem where there's no past things done on the certain issue by your country or your committee or whatever. So what are you going to do then? Follow and talk about the actions taken and not past promises. Use the statements of your leaders and do not fall into traps of false information, please. A lot of websites magnify the issues and magnify the problems that are going on. So you need to talk about and get into government websites and government videos, etc. Always ask yourself why a fact or a statement is relevant or has a purpose in your position paper. This will help you a lot when it comes to your speeches as well. Ask yourself why it is relevant. Maybe it can be used later for a later moderated caucus or a later topic we want to talk about. We'll be taking questions towards the end, okay? So you can also type it in the chat during the session. So save whatever you find because you do not know when you could need it, okay? And even though the position paper is a self-supporting document, it does not mean that you need to put every single point in it. Quality over quantity, guys. So make sure you cite your resources, make sure it's concise, make sure that it has everything in it. When it comes to crisis position papers, though, it's a bit different because most crisis position papers are like letters. They use personal pronouns and they cover the background issues and everything I've talked about. But they also include personal philosophy, drama, idioms, poetic language, etc., etc. It's definitely more adventurous than a normal like UNGA position paper. But that's it for position paper. It's going to be quite an adventure to write one, and that is when you take in most of your research and most information. Next, let's move on to the next individual component, blocks. So blocks are essentially the hearts of MUNs. It is a group of countries that is working towards a similar goal and a tangible document with similar aims, recommendations, opinions for the agenda, etc. This is where the ideas are basically nurtured. This is where collaboration gets concentrated as you move on in the committee sessions, right? So working papers, draft resolutions are formed over here from the policies and statements that are provided by all the countries in the bloc. We will be discussing like DRs and working papers soon in the next upcoming sessions, which you can surely catch up to from our Discord channel. I think one of our members will be dropping the links now. So when you walk into a room, if in a committee session, the goal of building a block might like look at you. So it might be really scary. And I get that because in my first seminar as well, I did not know how to lead a block. I did not know what it was. But that is where there is a clear distinction between the leaders in an MUN and the supporters and followers, right? So the leaders of the bloc are most countries like Russia, USA, China, etc. But don't think that you cannot lead a bloc just because you're a smaller country. It does not work like that. We'll discuss such things more in detail as well. If we go to the next slide, the most successful blocs you see are the ones that actually define themselves properly, right? And consider their size, their foreign policy, along with, of course, their views. So a bloc basically provides a group goal to work towards that is more specific than just individual focus on the agenda. Blocks are more fluid. That's one of the most important aspects of them. They form within the first few unmoderated of the committee, unmoderated caucuses. So blocks assure the countries that they are not alone in their stance and that their opinions, recommendations, actions can be voiced upon in the committee, right? So blocks end with a final paper or a concluding document being formulated with like everyone's input, which is then presented to the executive board. There's a few things you need to know if you want to start a block, right? So first, you need to position yourself strategically. if you get an opportunity to connect with people in your committee on a personal level, do it. Start getting to know a substantial number of people, how many other people you can in the committee, and find the ones who are on a similar stance as you. Find the ones who you relate to, right? Have a bird's eye view of the room and quickly form connections as fast as you can, keeping foreign policy in mind, of course, because from the moment you enter the room, you need to focus on essentially just socializing and making sure the light is on you, right? Your next opportunity to make blogs comes in the opening speeches and the GSLs, where you can show your command over the committee and your knowledge of the agenda. This is where you can frame the discussions, the conversation, and frame your command over the committee, right? Listen to the delegate speeches, make notes, send chits via or by not via EP, does not matter. Use their names in these notes and get a line of clear communication started, right? Because when you have that clear communication is when real relationships form inside a committee. So coming up as a block leader in an MUN means that you're a person who people trust and you're a person who they have faith can lead them to success. So naturally, when blocks are required to be formed, your blog or the block you're going to be a part of will emerge. So what you need to do is get a list of all the countries in your coalition and make sure that you have a group chat ready to discuss everything related to the next process. You want people to jump into ideas immediately. Proposed ones should be written down along with the delegate's name to notify any change that's going to be coming up. And honestly, you could ask me here, how do I get more people to join my blog? Very simple. You can just go up to a delegate in your blog and ask them to ask someone else. Because suppose I want the delegate of Australia in my blog, and I already have the delegate of UK. Looking at their foreign policy, they're amazing allies. So I can just send the delegate of UK, and they can simply ask, it would be amazing to have you in our blog. And we've noticed that you want to talk about so and so topic, and we would love to include that in our DR. Would you want to join our blog? It is as simple as that. Keep in mind that the ones you invite should have similar viewpoints, and please refrain from going against your foreign policy, guys. Very important. A blog should constantly focus on the progress made and discussed as a leader of the blog, okay? You need to make sure as the leader that you acknowledge their work and you inspire them. You need to act as a group over them, and you need to inspire them. You need to make sure that everyone's just a second, guys.
Hi everyone. Quickly, just 1 second. Sorry to interrupt the wonderful session going on. We're quickly putting in the link in chat. So I think Gauri will be putting it in for our session tomorrow on public speaking. In case you have a fear of public speaking, you want to learn how to do good public speaking, we have an expert coming in on teaching you how to do public speaking properly with a very, very extensive session. So we have put that link in chat. It's a very simple link, bit.ly/pb101. Please do register on that. That'll be a very extensive and great session for you, as great as this one. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Siri. You can continue. Thank you so much.
That's okay. Okay, so I was at, by showing respect to the delegates in your blog, they will stay loyal to your coalition. And by respecting their ideas and proposals, you could invent an amazing draft resolution as the final paper of your blog. The documentation in an MUN, such as final papers and all, will be included in an upcoming session. But for now, just know that a concluding paper to your blog includes things called sponsors and signatories. And we will get into that eventually. The goal of the block leader changes as the committee moves on, right? So from leading it, from trying to lead it and form a block, it changes to trying to lead it to success, right? So you need to empower others. That's the one thing that is, again, been mentioned, because something that is common and is to be avoided is that in most MUN blocks, everybody cannot be standing around watching and nodding their heads as someone leading it is discussing the clauses and making the final statements in the DR. In a healthy block, many issues should be addressed, and leaders and members should help each other build the clauses and statements, right? Also, one more thing is, by farming out these clauses and making sure that not just one person is not writing it, you cut down a lot of time taken to write the clauses and preambles, etc. Overseeing the other members of the block while they write, discuss possible mergers, talk about power delegates in the committee, and make changes to the final paper. That is what the leader's job is. As a member, you need to include what you stood for in the committee. You need to frame clauses on the steps you think are right. And everything you did in the committee up till now should be there in the DR as your next upcoming stance. You can spend time in the end of the DR's writing to oversee all the clauses once and go through everything. But one person in the block cannot and should not write the concluding document alone, because in my personal experience, I have seen delegates and blocks being completely banned from the committee because this was happening. And yeah, I'm sure you all are wondering what a power delegate is, which I mentioned. A power delegate is someone who asserts a lot of dominance towards the committee, right? So what happens if they approach your block? The good way to approach a power delegate in your block is to establish yourself as the respectful and respected delegate in your block. The power delegate may want to assert complete dominance and join the block to be a sponsor, but you need to realize that sponsorships is something that comes in during the writing of the final paper of the block, which will be discussed later naturally. But because it comes in during the writing, making sure that you are head to head with a power delegate can sometimes be a boon or a win, because a power delegate will try to be a sponsor in any way, shape, or form. And you also need to aim to be a sponsor as the block leader. So let's say that the power delegate is now inserting operatives and clauses that they think is right, and something that they're inserting clauses that could be controversial, that could go against some of the countries that are in the committee and are in your block. But you, as a person, other than you, the rest of the countries in your block are not going against it. What happens then? Maybe they're exhausted, maybe they're afraid because it's a power delegate. What happens then? Then you need to remember that you will need to make members understand that in order for an amendment to be considered friendly, all sponsors must agree. So whenever power delegates approach you in blocks, if you make sure that you are leading the block and you are going to be a sponsor and your disagreement is seen, then you will strip the delegate of their power, right? So yeah, essentially concluding that blocks are supposed to be the hearts of MUNs. And trust me, the most fun starts when blocks are formed, because that is when all the backstabbing, all the games, and all the perspectives of writing a document come into point of view. Let us dive a little bit into the research ethics before we go into exactly what researching should entail. So there are specific rules you need to maintain when researching in an MUN, right? I'll just brush over them because it majorly involves just basics. First and foremost, the most fundamental rule for any delegate is that you need to follow the quote, seeing is not believing, right? Do not believe everything you read. It may not even be real. Some person may have just written it as an article, and we all know the situation with Wikipedia as well. Only and only follow trustworthy websites. It is your responsibility in an MUN to make sure that that your research is very accurate. If you rely on misinformation and give flawed arguments, and maybe even undermine a delegate and receive a right to reply, which we have discussed in previous sessions. If you didn't come to those sessions, then you can find the YouTube links to those videos, which will be dropped in the chat now. But as I said, if you receive a right to reply, if you receive flawed, like a point of order on whatever flawed information you're giving, that is completely on you. So first, do not trust any websites other than the official ones, which now Abira, my friend, will also be discussing. In the same way, when researching, do not use ChatGPT or any other AI, please, because this will hinder a lot of information. Because as we know, some artificial intelligence bots don't keep up with the latest updates or the latest developments in an issue. So if I'm Israel Palestine in a committee, it doesn't mean that every single thing happening is going to reach me if I use AI, right? So AI most of the times thus may not have accurate information. And so it's always better for you guys to rely on official sources, which now will be discussed by my dear friend Avira. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, guys. I'm Avira. I'll be continuing the session from City, which is one of my favorite parts of the MUN, which is the research part. I love research. So before we just continue with the session, Anshu can stop presenting for just a second. So I would just want to ask everybody, Who here likes research? Who here thinks that research is an important part of an MUN? Who here likes research? If you could just raise your virtual hand. Yeah, I'm seeing a few hands. No one else here likes research or thinks it's interesting. All right, I'm seeing a few more hands. All right, I've seen 11, 12, 14, 15. Yeah, okay. I there's a lot of people. Thank you so much for this is kind of a check to see you guys are still listening. So yeah, I also love research. I think research is like one of my favorite parts of an MUN. Yeah, Navya is also one of the best parts of an MUN because it's just so you can just do so much in research outside committee because in committee you're like kind of scrambling all over the place. Like, oh, should I reply to this delegate? How should I use the given chits I have? Oh my god, what block should I form in research? You can, sit around, say, drink some lemonade if you want, put someone next to you and enjoy your research. Make thick copies of like everything your country has ever done. And you can really like enjoy research through that. So I also really enjoy research. So let's just discuss how you can do research well, because I think research is a really important topic. And especially if you have an experienced judge, it really counts for uh, how you're going to like progress forward in the MUN. So if you could go to the next slide. Yeah. So firstly, it's like use of official resources. I was putting this in chat, but you guys, if you don't use official resources, if you're going on Reddit and like finding out, or you're going on WhatsApp and finding out your information about your about your country, that's not recommended, because a lot of times, even though you don't cite whoever you are, like whatever source you're listing, especially in a speech, you do cite that in your position paper, you do cite that in your on other papers as well. And that if you don't use official resources, the chair will know that you're just making information up on spot. Although you can make up information, just research is just 10 times more better and also more reliable to the chair, and the chair notes all the research that you do. So examples are firstly the UN website. There are multiple types of UN websites. The UN website who just give you speeches of all the different countries and delegates. The UN websites on those dedicated specific countries. Even if you just go to the UN report of that country, every year the UN like produces a report for the country to see if they've like achieved some SDGs and all of that. If you go through that report and you find out information about the issue that you want to look for, that's a great information, because remember, we are model United Nations. That United Nations in the model United Nations is what is key. Ansh, could you please go back to full screen so that everyone can see better? Yeah, thank you. All right, next you can go to like then is committee mandate. So like a previous slide. Then is committee manage, understand like the purpose and scope of your committee's work. So for example, if you're in DISEC and if you don't know what DISEC is, if you don't know what whatever committee you're part of, then that's really bad, because you're supposed to know how your committee functions and what's the purpose of your committee. Even if you're outside, like if you're doing Lok Sabha, for example, which is a quite rare committee but it's still there, you should still have some like knowledge on how Lok Sabha functions and what's the purpose of Lok Sabha and what's the history of Lok Sabha. That's some basic knowledge you should know. If you're an EcoFin, you should know what EcoFin does, and it's really bad if you don't know what to do. Then also resolutions and conventions, and that's also super important. So for example, you're on a council for the environment, or you're then you should know what the Paris Agreement is, right? That's something that you should know as a prerequisite, because there's a huge thing when it came to climate change action. So if you don't know past resolutions, past conventions and all of that, that will make you just seem really dumb in front of other delegates. They will be able to tell that you're a first timer or a second timer or whatever, and they won't be able to really then the chair will also know that you didn't do your research properly. So these are three things: one, your own country, also how your committee works, and also how the past resolutions and convention your committee has done. For example, if you're working in the Humanitarian Council, you know that there's a lot going on with Israel and Palestine, and there's been a lot of treaties and agreements on that since 2014. So you should really pay attention to that and really pay mind to what all steps have been taken in your committee, so that you don't seem completely out of place. If you're in like an economic council and you're talking about humanitarian aid, if it's not related to economics, that's going to seem really off. So please use official sources and be aware of what you're doing in committee. Next slide, please. Yeah, there is news and media. Again, news and media, you can use news and media, but a lot of time news and media is oftentimes propaganda, or it can be really, really biased. But I think a really smart way and good way to use your news and media is to understand your country's stance better. For example, I'm Germany and I want to know my stance on humanitarian aid. So then I can go to German sources to see what German sources have been talking about humanitarian aid, to understand what Germany as a country views of the issue. Because if I'm going to general sources like Times of India to understand humanitarian aid of Germany, that won't really give me an accurate view, right? If I want to understand the view of the countries that are present, then I need to use their news sources. That's one really, really good tip that I use a lot. For me, again, if I'm using American sources, you should, if you're I'm America, I should use American sources. So that's one really good way. Also, stuff like BBC reports, the Economist reports, all of that is also really good to understand your committee stance. But again, please don't go on a random person's blog. Use like verifiable sources, use important sources, and use sources that are up to date, because you don't want to use information that is in like the 90s if your committee set in present day. Next is topic relevance. This is super, super important. So when you're going to previous slide, when you're going to when you're talking about your committee, and first of all, if you go to dissect, you won't just get your part of dissect discuss anything. You usually get one or two topics to talk about, right? For example, nuclear disarmament. Now make sure that the sources you're taking are from nuclear disarmament and also are including some statistics. What I'm saying is that you should find sources that include some statistics, because for example, you want to rebut another delegate, they're talking about how nuclear sources aren't good environmentally, and you have a really good statistic, then you can just use that statistic in your next speech, or say it as a rebuttal or as a reply, and that will be really, really better than just talking about, no, I read somewhere. If you have the source and the statistic on you right on hand, because remember, committees don't allow you to open up your laptop and research. Your research should be pre-done right before the session starts. So if you have all of that research kept on your side and you can quote it quickly, that will be much, much more beneficial than just talking about it out of your head. And then lastly is your country's updates. Again, please stay aware of what your countries is doing. If you have no idea about your country, for example, if I'm Paraguay and I have no idea about Paraguay, I have no about the history of Paraguay, I'm not telling you to notice all the leaders beforehand or what Paraguay is, but I should know basic problems in Paraguay. What Paraguay is like as a country. Is it a very docile country? Is it a very hostile country? What does Paraguay do? If it's like you're playing a character, right? Imagine you're going to play the character of Paraguay. Now, if you don't even know a little bit about the character development, about the personality of the country, then how are you going to represent it as a delegate? For example, we know that America is really, really brash and really, really very confidence building when it comes to certain issues. It doesn't move its stance on certain issues, for example, related to climate change. When everyone was signing the Paris Agreement, America did not. It stayed firm in its stance. When you're representing America, you should replicate those qualities. Whereas India, a lot of times, likes to stay neutral on certain issues or really consider both sides and balance out stuff. So that's, if you're playing India, then you should really act like that and embody that. If you don't know what your country has been doing as of lately, then you will act like a very basic delegate. Then you can go to the next slide. Um, yeah, all right. Then talking about other perspectives, right? So make sure that when you're researching about your country, you're not only looking at perspectives from your country's side. So for example, if I want to look at America, I won't only look at America's perspective as America. I will look at America's perspectives with India. I will look at America's perspective with Lebanon. I look at America's perspectives with Syria. I'm not just going to focus on America as a country, but also its perspectives and connections with other countries. Because what will that help me do? That will help me form my blocks. If I know what countries I have good relations with, if I know what countries I have bad relations with, I'll be able to form my blocks better. I'll be able to form my blocks that are actually politically correct. If America's out here, forming blocks with countries it's totally not on good terms with, then that's going to look super odd to the chair, and that's going to look super weird in the sense because you want to create blocks that make political sense as well. You're not going to like if that's like Russia creating a block with Ukraine, that's going to look really awkward with current times, right? So you should really know your current block position and how it's interacting with other countries as well. That you can see again from articles, blogs, but I really, really recommend looking at academic papers. If you want to know how you can get academic papers, there's a website called Google Scholar. Go to Google Scholar, go search up what particular relations you want to look at or what particular topic you want to look at. then go through a few research papers, go through a few positions. I'll just give an example. I was part of an economic financial council and I was representing Lebanon, and I could only find articles on it because Lebanon is quite a small country, right? There's not much open about articles on it. But when I went to Google Scholar, when I did actual research and went through academic papers, I could find out so many graphs of different types of humanitarian aid taking place in Lebanon, and between men and women, the rich and poor, the debt, all of that. I could see a lot more information in academic papers. So although blogs are still there, I would still recommend you use actually verifiable sources, because remember, you are acting as your delegate in a formal sense. So you should see what your country has done in a form on that same committee or in other committees in that formal sense before. How has your country acted before? So make sure you really consider other perspectives and other views of your country, or else you would seem very off. And it will also really help you form blogs, form speeches, attack different countries, support different countries. That all comes from your research. If we could go to the next slide, please. Then organizing your research, right? There's a lot you can do, but first of all, I really support this. Although note taking is a very crucial part of research, you can jot down a few points that you really want to mention from the start. I recommend taking printouts of your research. If you have a paper, print it out whenever you want to use it to form some policy, to use in some speech. You have it right there. You can quote it very easily. You have the source right there. That's one. Secondly, I would like to organize your research based on different topics. So after I've printed out one paper, for example, if I have two topics, one is on humanitarian aid and one is on the environment, I put all the environmental topics in one little folder and I put all of my humanitarian or topics on one little folder. This really helps you to really grab that research quick. And lastly, I like to do this. Do you know those small sticky notes that you can take, those really small sticky notes that are transparent in color? If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm sorry for that. But if you could have some sort of identification marker so that you can note down specific points, so that as soon as you need to use it in a speech, you have it. Research, what is really beautiful about research is that not only helps your papers, but it also helps your speeches. If you use it in your speeches, if you use it in your replies, if you use it in your rebuttals, that's what sets you apart from different delegates, because most people in an MUN don't research. For example, someone rebutted you. For example, you're talking about climate change, and then someone rebuts you by saying, oh, well, that fact on climate change isn't even real. You can quickly pull out your research paper, quote, actually, according to this verifiable UN source, climate change is real. Here's all the examples of climate change. Hence, your reply is wrong. Now, instead of me just arguing back and forth with them, if I have a source on hand that I can quote, I will look so much more, firstly, confident, but also agreeable to other delegates and to the chair. And they'll put a much better impression on me. So make sure to use sources that are verifiable. Don't go out using a blog you can't quote. And keep that printed, keep that in your notes, and then just use all those important quotes when you need to. Next slide, please. Yeah, speech structures. Now again, I want you to firstly just a quick sidetrack. The way you make your speeches good is by our public speaking. So Shivansh already interrupted Siri in the middle to talk about that, but please go to our public speaking lesson. It's going to be really helpful for speeches, because public speaking is not just in MUNs, it's in debate, it's in life. You should know how to be a public speaker if you want to excel in a corporate space, if you want to excel in your school, if you want to run for student council president. You have to give a really good public speech. So really sign for that session, because that is so much more versatile. But to also just talk about speeches more, there's no fixed format for how you say your speeches. You can say your speeches in the poem, you can create a story, you can do whatever you want. And this works really well in crisis committees, because I have said some really creative speeches in crises. I've made a whole hypothetical scenario and killed off characters in my speech. But in more formal speeches, this is what you go with your introduction, content, conclusion, simple as that. And if you want to know how to give good introductions and how to really lay out your arguments, please go to our Debating 101 series. That's on YouTube. If you want to know how to give a really good introduction, that's what sets you apart. Just to give an example, I gave the example last time as well, but to start off my speech in Ecofin for one MUN, I started off by saying it was on the environment. So I said, if Taylor Swift can have her 50 private jets and is emitting as much pollution as a small country, then why are we criticizing small countries here? The real ones who should be focusing on climate change right now are big countries like America, India, etc. Now, didn't I actually suck you in with that speech? Now, don't you want to know what I'm going to talk about, what are my arguments. So your introduction should be really catchy, it should be really concise. Don't make it too political or, bashing another opponent. But after all, you need to make yourself relevant. So make a really catchy introduction, set out your argument. In GSLs, keep it very simple, but in your later moderated caucuses, you can really go a bit creative with it. Then to talk about content, your each speech should have a purpose. So make sure that, for example, in the moderated caucus, if it's a specific topic, please make sure you stick to that topic. If you're going out here talking about a completely different issue, that would look really bad to the chair. Topics are set for a reason. So please stick to that topic when you're talking about in your content. Next slide, please. Yeah, so again, this is just what we've been talking about: introduction, body, conclusion. Keep it simple. You usually have not more than like 3 minutes to speak, so you need to keep it concise, but don't go on talking really fast. Again, if you want to know how to say a speech properly, go to our public speaking session. If you want to know how to structure a speech properly, go to our debating 101 session. We're giving you all of these resources for free, and MUNing is just a mix of all these beautiful worlds of debating, of public speaking, of social relations. MUNing is literally the all-star of that, is combining all of that. So yeah, it's really interesting to do all of that. Next slide. Ansh, if you, yeah, okay. That's it. We tried to pack in as much information as we could into this session, because research, I know a lot of people here are into research. That's where they really shine in MUNs, and I love research as well. I would come up with thick, like clear files filled with stacks of research, and that was really what's meant to. Also, we talked about really important things: blocks. Blocks are one of your main things in MUNs. Creating a catchy name for your block, and signing it off as this huge deal, and getting your position paper passed is one of the best feelings in the world. So thank you so much for coming to our session. If you learned something, we're so appreciative of that. And you can stop sharing now. That's it for the session today. I've really enjoyed talking to all of you guys. As always, yeah, Shivansh has something to say, so he'll go ahead and say it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Avira and Siri, for leading the session. Yeah, for everyone, they're like one of our newest speakers. They've come up and they only led a session just before this once as well. So they're doing a really good job. We would really appreciate if you appreciate them and what they're doing over here, and we can acknowledge that. We try to get in as many new speakers for you, try to get in more people who have done debates in MUNs for a longer amount of time so that you get more knowledge and a lot more stuff that you can use for your debates in MUNs. I'm sure Avira already talked about this before, but we would really be happy if we see you tomorrow as well to come in. I know it's a weekend. I know we all want to watch Netflix till 3 a.m. in the night, watch Dr. House on Netflix, whatever. That's all fine. You guys can do that. But these weekends are also your important time to actually build your meaningful profiles that you can send to your colleges and get admitted to the best of the universities in the world. So if you join in a session tomorrow, and of course, if you keep your cameras on and participate, we would love to give you certificates and anything you want as form of recognition for that as well. The link has been pasted in chat multiple times. You can just go to it, click on it, register, and yeah, we'd love to see you there. I don't have anything specific to say. If you guys still have questions, because we have time till 7:30, please do stay back, ask Siri and Avira those questions. I'll probably see you in the session tomorrow as well. Thank you so much again for joining in. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Siri and Avira to take it over.
Yeah, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands, because this was a session we wanted to complete the individual components of and get you a brief idea on speech structuring. So from coming up sessions, we'll be deep diving into the same, and all questions will probably be answered as time goes on. Dia, you have a question? Please click on the pop-up. That's news.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
While we were talking about research papers and when we came to the conclusion, you said something about making sure that I make a strong point and make my position or my stance very clear, but also not present something very concrete. Can you tell a little more about that?
Yeah, of course. So when you're making proposals in a position paper, you cannot essentially give any concrete, like, I want a humanitarian pause. Maybe in some situations, some countries have already been stressing on it, but some countries are against it. So first of all, you need to know what exactly is going to be a strong conclusion to document is going to be something you want to do in your document. Yes. So suppose Avira, that's fine. Suppose you want to, I'll give you a good example. Suppose I'm the delegate of France and I want to do something about the Muslim thing going on. There's a lot of controversy going on about that. Or I'm delegate of let's do America, and there's a lot of controversy going on about abortion. So I, as a delegate of USA, cannot give a full concrete conclusion to my position paper that yes, I completely want to ban abortion. I completely am for this or against this as my proposal in my position paper. Because see, position papers is just something you submit before the MUN, right? It's just for getting an idea of what you want to discuss. So in the MUN, that is when you actually discuss what happens if we ban abortion, what happens if we actually just let abortions happen all over America, all over the world, essentially. So yeah, that's why you can't exactly be concrete, but you have to be decisive. That's all. And if you want me to elaborate more, I can.
Is submitting a position paper mandatory?
No. It completely depends on the conference. See, some conferences don't even read the position papers. They only ask the delegates to make it. Most conferences, though, the chairs evaluate you upon them. They mark you upon position papers, and they will let you know about that. So in those times, position papers becomes a tiebreaker. Like I have seen delegates who have won simply by just 1 or 2 points extra because of the position paper. I remember in my second or third MUN, when I figured out how to write position papers, the first thing my EB gave to me as feedback was about my position paper. So it really gives you the first opinion ka chance. If you hit the first opinion, you get brownie points. That's how it works.
Okay, and this may be a little off the topic of today, but I had another question. When you're being pressed, right? Sometimes I've seen that the head of press or whoever's questioning you tends to ask you questions off topic about your country and its past or its current issues that are completely irrelevant to the topic. And we're supposed to frame answers and give on-spot speeches on that.
Yeah.
How does one take care of that? How does one handle that?
Okay. So again, completely depends on your country and your committee. So suppose I'm Russia and suppose I'm UK and I've been asked in the Israel-Palestine conflict, it's honestly because of you, because you passed the Balfour Declaration. And they asked me that in the press. I have two options to go from there. One, defend my country and be like, no, that was the right decision to make by our country's stance. But the EB will mark me negatively. Why? Because the whole committee session, if I, as a delegate of UK, I'm supporting the whole Israel-Palestine conflict. I'm saying, let's stop this conflict. Let's not get into this. This is not this is not something I condone. And then I'm telling the press, you know what, we made the right decision passing the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration was right. It honestly started a war in itself. That is when you lose chance of like any award at that point. That is a huge point you're going against itself. But that's the first thing. Second thing, you accept that what your country has done is wrong. Again, not an option that many delegates take up because again, it's a hit to the pride. But yeah, it's mostly an option taken by delegates who are very experienced because they know it is the better option depending on your stance. I hope that answers you. And if there's any one great example I can give you, suppose I'm DPRK, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and I've been asked something about my attacks on South Korea. I can very well just say, I don't want to make a statement. I'm not going to make it. It's my choice. Because DPRK has that attitude, right? North Korea has that attitude. So the delegate can also have the same. That's a huge plus point of being a country like DPRK or Russia. You can just embody their attitude.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
No problem. Aditya, just give me 1 second. Yep.
I have a question about how do I properly understand and comprehend the attitude that I have to show if I've given a country to assign. Like if I'm Russia, so how should I exactly research to know the attitude I should portray?
Okay. So first and foremost, you first look at your general knowledge. I mean, we know Russia doesn't really care about many resolutions. It has so many sanctions just because of the Ukraine-Russia thing. But does it care? Has it made any like proper statements apologizing? Has it made any humanistic effort? No. It has looked for its own benefit and it has only talked about their story. So that is how you can also do it in the MUN. It's that simple. Because suppose you're not Russia, suppose you're some other country. Even then, when you pose a question to Russia, they can completely reply in a very monotonous way and not even reply to you. And that is going to be considered fine. Another way you can understand a country's attitude is by looking into their history, to be honest. Like, if you go into Indian history or like how India has taken decisions, I'll give you a good example. COVID happened, not that recently. So when COVID actually happened, how did India react? What was its focus? India may be focused on its people and the people's betterment and their lives rather than like the research or rather than maybe the train conditions or the railway ministry or the education ministry. That is how India reacted. That is its very humanistic approach. But that's maybe not what the USA did. Maybe they're extremely focused on research department and they completely like give zero funding to the rest. That is how you understand what a country's like way of approaching a problem is. And you can also do this internationally. So suppose the Israel-Palestine conflict. How did India react to that? What is India's stance? So suppose India was very humanistic again. It is very against the conflict. So that shows that we care more about the lives and more about the war going on than we do the financial resources. But USA is supporting the conflict. USA is sending troops. USA is sending weapons. So that means that they are not exactly in support of ending the war. Yeah, you're following me, I hope.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. So Russia vetoed a resolution recently which aimed to have a humanitarian pause in Israel and Palestine. What does that say? That says that Russia does not want a humanitarian pause, right? AKA, it does not want to look at the lives that are being like completely destroyed over there. It wants to look at the war prospects. That tells you how you have to embody the country. You have to be a person, a delegate who does not exactly care about the lives that are being lost, but wants to discuss about the rest of the issues at hand. When you have or enter an MUN flow, you will completely understand how it works. Don't worry. We'll be having mock MUNs and everything soon. So once you get into that, I promise you all it'll be extremely clear.
Okay, I got it. Thank you so much.
Hey, okay. So my next question was, while framing speeches or giving my speeches, what is a better way to opt? Is it, just showing the good that my country, or for example, a committee like AIPPM, my party has done, the good side of it, or attacking the other and saying the negatives of the other while giving something like a GSL?
So you're basically asking me what you should focus on in your speech.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I'll tell you, don't just focus on bragging about your country. You are there to question everyone else on what they are doing. That is the way I approach speeches and the way that I see many successful delegates doing it, because the way you actually tell your speech, you're trying to invoke a controversy or a war in your committee. You're trying to invigorate them. You're trying to get them completely enthusiastic, completely involved in the committee. So something I tell my friends to use in committee is not direct insulting, but subtle insulting. So suppose the delegate of USA said something and I don't like it. So I'll go suppose I'm the delegate of Australia. So I'll go as the delegate of Australia. I say that the delegate of USA statement can seem extremely void because the country lacks so and so things, because the delegate lacks view on so and so things in the economy. How can a delegate like that expect to come into this committee and talk about such an issue when they lack views on so and so things? So that is how you can attack. But I would still suggest structure. We'll be talking about like exact structurings in upcoming sessions where we'll tell you how to start a speech, how to end a speech, all of that. But for now, just keep in mind you don't want to directly insult a country's sovereignty, integrity, and all of that, because they will and can raise a right to reply. If you were there in the previous session I took, the right to reply is basically when they can just directly come and tell you have insulted my country, etc. I think you were there. I remember seeing your name. Yeah. So
I was.
You can, but honestly, always raise a POI. If you have a good question and if you really want to insult them, raise a POI. Marks are given very liberally in POIs. Okay? And so, yeah, speech structuring and going against a delegate, it's all about how much you want to invigorate the person.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, great. If there's any more questions, you can definitely just drop into the Discord community channel we have. All the links will be dropped in the chat now. From Avira's side and my side, thank you so much to you all for joining in, and we'll definitely have more successful sessions in the future. Thank you so much.